we're going to deal with some Spellbinders today, and we're going to use one collection of dies to make different cards. This blue one uses the die just added to the card. This one has the background embossed into a card, and this one uses the die to create a complete filigree card. So we're going to show you how to do all three of those cards in three separate sections. So the dies that I'm going to be using today are the 5x7 Enchanted Labels 28. This is the plain labels 28, and this is the decorative labels 28, and all these will mix and match together. So this is the first card, and we're just going to add this die cut to the front of the card. So what we're doing is we're creating a hinged card, and I've just cut two pieces the same, and I've used an extra piece to go into the back to glue onto the back piece, and then I'm going to glue this part ready for the front of the card. So I'm just going to add some wet glue, and I'm just going to position that on the top, make sure it's level at the bottom, and that creates my hinged card. Now the next thing we need to do is create a mat for this card. So all I'm doing is laying my patterned paper on the card, and I want to leave a small border around the edge. So I'm just going to make a little mark on there, and then I'm going to cut this edge off with the paper trimmer. Now once I have that mat cut, I'm just going to glue that in place so that it leaves a small border around the card. And from white card I've cut myself another smaller layer, and I've done the same thing to create a smaller pink mat, and I'm going to glue the pink ones onto the white ones for this part of the card. Now before I add these together, I'm going to work on the smallest piece, and the first thing I need to do is cut the largest die from the Enchanted Labels 28. Now because this is intricate around the edge, to help it release from your die, all I'm going to do is just rub over the cutting edges with some talcum powder, and then if you place that down face down onto your card, and this is the white cutting plate. Now this is important, so if you just look at your ground calibre, you have a slide out portion to the calibre, and this tells you your cutting plate. You always cut into the white mat, but once you've got that cutting plate set up, it doesn't matter which way you run those plates through your machine. So we'll come back to the plates. We have the white cutting plate, the card, the die, and the grey base plate, and that's going to go through the machine. Now it doesn't matter if it goes through that way or it goes through that way, it will still cut your card as long as you have the cutting edge into your white plate. So once we've cut it, we can now emboss it. So we're now going to put it with the cutting edge onto facing upwards onto the grey plate. We're going to cover that with the tan mat, and then on top of that we're using the pink embossing plate, and I'm going to run that through the calibre. So now that that's been embossed, we can release it from the card, and you might need a pokey tool just to start it off, but because it's been talcum powdered, it will come out relatively easy. But there you have the embossing on your card, and that's now ready to add to the front of your base. So I've cut my panel, I have now embossed it to give it some texture, and I'm going to add that to the front of the smallest panel, and I'm going to use some foam tape just to raise it up. So from the Decorative Labels 28, I've used the largest die to cut this shape, and then I have stamped and heat embossed a sentiment, and I do that first, and then I use the die and put it in the position that I want it to, and then cut out my sentiment. It's a lot easier than cutting the sentiment out first and then trying to stamp in the middle. And to make sure that it stays in place, I'm just going to tape it so that it doesn't move as I run it through the caliper. So that's the next size, and this is another size from these dies, and I'm just going to cut those now, ready for my card. So that's all three elements cut, ready now for the card. You can emboss these if you wish, but before I add them to each other, I'm wrapping a piece of pink ribbon around the largest piece, and that's going to be fastened on the back so that the workings will be hidden when the card is all assembled. So once I've done that, I'm going to add foam tape, and I'm going to layer up all these other pieces together. And once this is all assembled, again with some foam tape, I'm just going to add that to the top, and I'm just putting a little bit in the middle which stops it collapsing in the centre. So I'm just going to add this to the front of my card. Make sure it's the right way round. So that's going to sit along there. And then with some more of the ribbon, I'm going to use my bow maker, and I'm going to make a double bow. So I'm just going to glue the bow in place along this side of the card, and then I'm going to add a little flower to the centre. Now I want to curl the stem, so I'm just taking a barbecue stick and I'm holding the flower, and I'm just twirling the length of the wire around the barbecue stick, and then just flatten it on the back and glue that in place. That glued in place. Now just to finish this card off, I'm going to add some pearls in the corner, and I couldn't decide whether to use pink or white, but I think I'll go with the white. So that now is the finishing touch to the first card.